From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. Do you want free advice? Visit us at podtherapy.net or tweet to us at podtherapyguys to submit your questions to the show. It's time to record episode 3, and we promise no more Donald Trump. The two of us are the only stable geniuses we will be referring to today. And now, broadcasting from Level 9 Studios, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy. Okay, welcome back, everybody, for episode 3. Thanks for coming back, and for our new listeners, welcome.
Yes, all 2 of you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be at least 4.
We get them 2 at a time. I think that's the deal. So if you've discovered us, welcome to the party, and thanks for giving us a shot. Excited to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for tuning in. Please feel free to submit any questions to the show. Please visit our Facebook page. Give us some likes if you enjoy what you hear today. All right. Well, let's get started, Jim.
Yes, sir. All right. So our first question is titled, Gaming Man, Angry Wife. So I think it's kind of like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I think that's what he's going for there. And this guy's username is Life is a Slice. All right. Here's what we got. He says, I'm a 40-year-old man who has been with the same woman for 16 years. We have 2 kids together who are 8 and 10. I started playing video games quite extensively after the birth of our second son. My wife accuses me of neglecting her, the children, and the house for years. She claims that I left her to care for the kids, the cooking, the grocery shopping, the cleaning, the yard work, and to make sure the bills were paid, all on top of working a full-time job. We often had arguments regarding my inability to wake up with our kids, if needed during the night or in the morning, as I was often too tired due to a long night of gaming. She claims that living with me as a gamer was the equivalent of having a live-in babysitter. My wife, in the last couple of years, had completely grown tired of me being a gamer, so much so that she was contemplating divorce. We no longer slept in the same bed, we barely spoke, and had not had sex in years. In an attempt to improve my marriage, I was able to limit my video game play. I became more attentive towards the kids and the housework, and I left behind the late-night gaming. Our marriage was starting to improve. I felt my wife becoming more attracted to me. She finally started wearing her wedding ring again. We started sleeping in the same bed at times, and we recently had sex for the first time in 5 years. In the past month, I downloaded a new game, which I find really enjoyable. I've increased my video game play throughout the day, and have started to game again late at night, but only when she chooses not to sleep in the same bed as I do. I make sure the house is clean and that the kids' needs are met, however my wife is starting to become increasingly angry with me. I do not believe this is fair, as I'm doing what she asked of me in regards to household and responsibilities. I work full-time and bring home a good paycheck. I feel I am not the same gamer I once was. My wife states she is okay with me playing video games for a reasonable amount of time, and I gather from our arguments that she means about 2 to 3 hours a day. She does not agree with my late-night gaming and gets very angry when I am up so late talking and playing with other people online. As a compromise, she has requested I turn them off at midnight. Gaming is my passion, and I often get lost in time playing them as time just seems to fly by. Also, the crew I play with are in different time zones, so gaming needs to take place late at night, so I'm able to play with them. I feel 6 hours of gaming after a full day of work and gaming as I desire on the weekends is acceptable, provided I have attended to the kids' needs, I have helped around the house, and I have been involved in family activities. My wife argues that that amount of time I play games is unattractive and unappealing. She states that she will not settle for another round of video game addiction. I just wish she would understand that gaming is fun for me. It's the only thing that I'm good at, and it gives me great satisfaction. What can I do to convince her otherwise?
Okay.
Yeah.
Great question. So I've actually treated video game addiction, and it is a real thing. It's very prevalent. I mean, more than 150 million people are playing video games regularly in the U.S.
Wow. And that's just Call of Duty.
Yeah. Well, and actually, there's been a lot of we're starting to research it more, right? So we're starting to get a better understanding of it. Different countries research it in different ways. The problem that we're having in researching it is figuring out what is the actual diagnostic criteria for this. As of right now, they pretty much use the diagnostic criteria for substance use disorder, which doesn't really fit perfectly, but it kind of helps for research purposes.
So it sounds like you're saying the difference between when it's a real problem versus when it's just like recreation. That's what you mean by diagnosis?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you diagnose addiction.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the studies are showing that anywhere from, I think the lowest was around 5%. Some of the other studies have shown upward around 12%, which is still relatively low. But when we're talking about 150 million people gaming, that's a big chunk of
wow, 5 to 12% become addicted to it.
So we're talking, 1.3, 1.4 million people.
So do you measure addiction by time? Is it just as many hours as you play, or how do you measure that?
No, absolutely not. Actually, that's one of the things that researchers will tell you is it's not really a time thing. What we're looking at is how does it impact your life?
Oh.
Looking at how it impacts your life, like in what ways does it impact your relationships? Does it impact your ability to function? Things like that. So we can talk about like the 4 C's of addiction.
Yeah.
Right. So 4 C's of addiction, compulsion, which is like the overpowering urge to play. And then not playing creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress. Cravings. So this is like you're actually kind of getting a physical need, like you're physically craving something. Mm-hmm. And then we can look at consequences. So continued use despite negative consequences. I think that this is where Life is a Slice, kind of his story really resonates in this specific area. Obviously, this seems to be causing a lot of conflict, right? And then also looking at control. That's the 4th C. So, playing more than you intended to. It's basically like the loss of control.
Yeah.
So the loss of control, like I said, could be playing more than you intended to in a given period of time. Could be attempts to cut down or quit that have failed. Yeah, or unsuccessful. So, Life is a Slice, I guess that's kind of where I would start. And this can be very difficult for anybody dealing with an addiction to actually look, and to take a real honest look, because obviously you have a dog in this fight, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can kind of relate in the sense of the, like, well, this is my passion, this is my hobby, this is what I enjoy doing, but it interferes with my relationship with somebody else. Like, for me, my big passion is golfing. I love golfing, but then it can become a problem in a relationship where it's like, oh, let's go to LA for the weekend. Well, I can't because I promised my buddies we were going to go golfing.
Right.
Well, let's do this weekend. I can't because I really want to golf and I'm very passionate about it.
It's getting in the way of everything else.
Yeah. So that's one thing to kind of really take a look at is how is this affecting your life? And here's the other thing too. You've already performed the experiment, right? So Life is a Slice writes in and he explains how his video game playing was causing a lot of problems.
Yeah.
I read in here that his wife stopped wearing her wedding ring.
Yeah, she wanted to divorce him.
Right. Like, okay, that's a pretty good indicator that something is wrong, right? And then you cut down on the video game playing, and then things improved. Right. And so that right there tells you something.
Right. He ran the experiment.
Right. And then you go back to it, and things are falling apart again. There's no clearer evidence that this is a problem than running that experiment right there.
One of the things, too, that's interesting about that, I think this zooms out to everybody, right, Nick? Because I think lots of us wonder, at what point is this something I enjoy? Is this my recreation? And he says this, he says, I've earned this. I work hard. This is not hurting anybody. It's just me enjoying my time. And I think I relate to that. I think a lot of people do. They say, hey, you know what? I enjoy having a few cocktails when I get home. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not driving. Or, now in Las Vegas, marijuana is legal. A lot of people say, you know what? I'm just having a joint, but it's legal now. I'm not breaking any laws. A lot of people are overeating, or they're going to the casino and gambling, or they're playing poker online. This is how I unwind. And he's sort of saying, his question to us is, gee, Nick, how do I explain to my loved ones this isn't a problem? But I kind of hear you saying, you know what, this kind of is a problem. Like, it's crossing the threshold.
If the people who are important in your life are telling you this is a problem because it's interfering with our relationship, then by default, it's a problem.
Yeah. Even if it's just a problem for them, it becomes your problem because there's disconnection.
Right. Yeah. And who wants to lose their family? Who wants to lose their wife over video gaming?
Right.
And again, one thing I want to make clear here too is that I'm not anti-video game at all. I enjoy playing video games.
You're not good at them, but you enjoy.
Yeah. given my skill level.
Setting a low score.
But here's some things to maybe think about and take a look at. One thing that I would recommend for you, Life is a Slice, check out GameQuitters.com. It's a website. It's run by Cam Adair. I've gotten to meet him. He's brilliant when it comes to video game addiction, and he basically runs this kind of self-help group to get gamers who want to quit, who have identified that it's a problem, to help them get off of it and to kind of get their life back on track. And he's very clear too about saying that he's not anti-video game. This is specifically, for people who feel like, that this is causing a problem, that they're not able to function, that it's causing relationship issues, things like that. So check that out. It's GameQuitters.com. He also has a YouTube channel under the same title. But one thing to really kind of think about is try doing a 90-day detox.
Yeah.
This is one thing that Cam would tell you on his YouTube channel. This is also something that when I was treating video game addiction with teenagers that we would encourage them to do. Even if they don't feel it's a problem, give it up for 90 days, and then let's reassess at that point, and let's see how things are going. Because I can actually kind of relate a little bit with the video gaming in the sense that I used to video game all the time. I never got probably more than like 5 hours a day, but pretty consistent. I was constantly playing video games. And then I became a foster parent for a year, and I never had access to my own PlayStation.
Right.
Because the kids had it.
So you detoxed.
So yeah, it was kind of a forced detox. But then now I'm not a foster parent anymore. I have access to it, but it just doesn't appeal to me as much as it used to. The majority of people who play video games are not going to have a problem with it. Just the same as with alcohol. The majority of people who drink are not going to develop alcoholism.
Right.
But for that percentage that do, it becomes a huge deal. And video game is kind of the same thing. For the people who do develop that addiction and that compulsion to play, it can destroy their lives very
quickly. And it comes
quickly.
back to, you said the warning signs are the 4 C's of addiction, that it begins with is it becoming compulsive? So do I do this automatically now? Am I craving it? So do I have an emotional or physical connection to it where I'm thinking about it when I'm not doing it and I'm sort of obsessing about it now? And then consequences. Am I doing this despite negative consequences? And then lastly was control. Am I able to cut back? Have I tried and been unsuccessful? And if we see all 4 of those warning signs, the word addiction starts to become really appropriate to describe what's going on, right?
Right, absolutely. And here's another thing too that I would like to make clear for Life as a Slice is even if this does not meet the criteria for addiction, it's pretty clear that this is becoming a problem. It doesn't have to be an addiction for it to become a problem, right? And this is, I think some decisions are going to have to be made, as far as, if you want to regain this relationship with your family. One of the things, too, that I saw in here is I do not believe this is fair as I'm doing what she asks of me in regards to household responsibilities. I think the important thing there that I pick up on is in regards to household responsibilities. So Life is a Slice, you may be right in that sense, but I kind of get the sense from reading this that from your wife's perspective, this is more than just household responsibilities. It sounds like this is really now starting to impact the intimacy in the relationship. Even if you are a great father, which I'm sure you are, and you spend good quality time with your kids, this seems to be affecting how she feels about you.
Yeah. And also, I think another indicator, Light, do you only now do these other responsibilities so you can get back to gaming? And I think like that should be something you notice. It's become such a priority in your life that the only reason I'm doing other things is so I can do this and not be messed with. And if you're making that much room at the table for this one activity, it's fair to say that addicted or not, it has a disproportionate amount of real estate in your head. And that can be off-putting to your mate, and that could be something that they want you to take a look at.
Right.
I like it. Good advice.
One other thing, too, that I wanted to kind of bring up with this, with video gaming is there's not a whole lot of research out there yet looking at how it affects the body physically. Mm-hmm. But one thing I'm really interested in that I think might be an issue, and you're hearing it here first on Pod Therapy.
Copyright.
I'm really worried about what this is going to do physically. And here's what I mean by that is when you're playing a game, Call of Duty or something like that, you are submersed in the game. And the more that you feel involved in it, the better the game, right? So in a game like that, you are constantly surrounded with threats. Well, when a threat appears, it throws our body into fight or flight. But what happens when that happens repeatedly in a sedentary lifestyle, where there's never actually any physical movement once you get into that fight or flight?
Oh, so you don't metabolize the emotion.
Right. So it's like you're constantly being put into fight or flight, but there's never any actual movement that kind of releases some of that energy. I wouldn't be surprised if later on, 10, 15 years from now, we discover that
health
if
effects.
10 or 15 years, this is causing health effects. Yeah,
yeah,
this
like
is
a
affecting,
kink in the hose.
Yeah, our heart, our cardiovascular system, things like that.
Well, if that happens, I will demand royalty payments, and we will make sure you get that Nobel Peace Prize, Nick. Or Nobel Prize, right, for neurochemistry. You heard it here first, folks.
I wouldn't know what to do with it if I won it. So
I think you just hang it on something. Hang it on the wall.
All right. Our next listener writes in, was I right to distance myself from my 2-year-old daughter? Well, I have been battling with pain pills and heroin addiction for the past 4 years. The past 2 years, it's basically consumed my life to the point I can't work or function without them because of withdrawals. I'd wake up and have to hustle money, steal, or whatever to get well and be happy. So about 3 months ago, I said enough is enough, and I moved about an hour away to my adoptive parents where I can't find pills. I've been clean for 3 months. Now all the emotions are flooding back in. I've been a terrible father. I've been so selfish and unfair to my little girl, taking her with me to pick up drugs and to the pawn shop to sell stolen stuff. I've never mistreated her, but I put drugs before my own flesh and blood. So I had to distance myself from her and the whole situation. My daughter is well taken care of with her grandparents. I just wanted some advice. Was leaving her the right thing to do?
I say yes. I think absolutely it was. I think you were going to lose your daughter. You're committing crime, and having substances in your system. So it was a matter of time before eventually you got busted or got caught driving. CPS takes your kid away. And also I would argue that if you're high with your children, you're not there anyway. And the version of you that's present, you're blind to it, but you're not as charming as you think you are. And you're not as useful as you think you are. And you're not as loving as you think you are. You're scary. You're out of it. You're in a trance. You're nodding off. And you're ignoring them anyway. So honestly, I congratulate him on, getting some measure of sobriety, putting some distance between him and, his family, because that's helpful. My response to that is I think you absolutely did the right thing. Do you still feel guilty about it? Yeah, I think you get to feel guilty. I think you get to feel ashamed that you did this to your daughter or that you associated her with it. But that's not necessarily an unhelpful emotion. You could put that in your pocket, and that could actually help you stay sober. But it sounds like you're on your way, and I think that your daughter deserves to experience the sober and healthy version of you. When you can offer that to her, it's time to reconcile. But for right now, I think you're doing the right thing by giving her some distance. I don't know, Nick. That's my take. What do you think?
Well, I agree. And I think, first of all, it's important to just say congratulations and good job. Pat yourself on the back for, number one, recognizing that this is an issue, and number two, deciding to take action to do something about it. You've already gone further than most will with this problem. So that's good. Now, one thing I would like to add, there is no such thing as a geographical cure, right? So wherever you move, your addiction is going to move with you. Now, that being said, I don't think that this was a bad move by any means. I think that this was necessary. One of the things that we do with residential treatment when working with addiction, one of the things that I work with my clients on is learning to recognize internal vulnerabilities and external risk factors. Okay, so external risk factors would be things like my environment, going to events where there's drugs and alcohol, my social group, things like that. Internal vulnerabilities would look at things like things that I'm dealing with internally. Could be guilt, shame, trauma, just all of these things that are happening inside my own head, right? So by going into residential treatment or relocating, that can be helpful because essentially what you do is you cut off one half of that equation. You cut out the external piece so you can focus on the internal piece.
Right.
You bring the internal piece under control, and then we can look at the environment, right? But the internal piece has to be dealt with. So the move, I think, was a good idea. As far as distancing yourself from your daughter, that's tough. There's no easy way to deal with that. The one thing that I always like to say to any of my clients is I always say recovery is an investment, right? Like any other investment, you are sacrificing something now for greater return later. And so if that means that right now you need to sacrifice some time with your daughter in order to get more time later, in order to be there when she graduates and walk her down the aisle when she gets married, if this is what you have to do to achieve that, then good for you. Then absolutely do that. One thing that I would warn you against would be to just be really honest with yourself and make sure that this isn't an avoidance tactic. I've seen that before too, where people will intentionally separate themselves from somebody who's very important to them because they say, well, I got to focus on my recovery, when really what they're doing is there's stress in this relationship. I feel guilt and shame about what's going on in this relationship. I don't want to deal with it. Right? As long as that's not what's driving this, then I think you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. And I like that piece that you said too, that you're doing the right thing as long as you're focusing on yourself right now and you're putting this time to good use. With the intention of coming back as a healthy father. And if you're out there, folks, and you're dealing with something and, you're thinking, gosh, I think I struggle with this issue or substance abuse or, video games or whatever problem has gotten out of control and out of balance in your life, let me just tell you something. It is never convenient to recover. It is just never going to be convenient. It's never going to be the right time. But now is the right time because, as Nick said, it's an investment. So it's a short-term sacrifice for the long-term gain. And we're talking the rest of your life and the rest of these relationships and the rest of your career. So I would advise you, do not wait. Do not take that time. Check in with a therapist. Right into the show. Start to get some fact checks, some reality checks, some perspective, because it is really appropriate to deal with this in the here and now.
Absolutely.
All right. So we got our next question, Nick. I think this is a little bit more of a lighthearted one, but a good one. The question is, why does every guy, quote, not want a relationship, end quote? Here's what it says. I went on a date with this guy, and he's gorgeous. But literally, as soon as we sat down to eat, he tells me he doesn't want a relationship because travel or something, and that he cuts girls off when they get attached. In fact, he mentioned multiple times that he doesn't want a relationship. Yet, he texts me every morning, tonight, and calls me babe constantly, and screenshots my pictures on Snapchat. I told him I do want a relationship or to move towards one. Why don't guys want a relationship? What do you think there, Nick?
That's a tough question.
Is it tough? I think it's simple. I think it's very simple. And it's not what the listener thinks. I promise my answer is not what the average person's going to say.
Now I'm really interested to hear what your
I'm an enigma, Nick. I'm a man of mystery.
Okay, well, here's my initial reaction to this. You are part of this equation as well. Which means that you get to set the boundaries for yourself. You get to decide what is okay for you in a relationship and what is not. And it may come time to enforce those boundaries. So if you are getting the sense that, from what I read, you want a relationship, you're getting the sense that it sounds like you're getting mixed signals, that he's saying no, he doesn't, and yet is acting as if there is a relationship. You have every right to draw the line and say, no, I'm not going to put up with this. This isn't what I'm looking for. And here's the thing. If he is not going to provide what you're looking for in a relationship, the longer you stay in this, the longer it prevents you from finding the one that will, right? So if he's not the one, move on.
Right.
Draw that line. And I hate to be the one to have to give you this advice because I know this isn't great advice to hear, but if he's not providing for you what you're looking for, then it's time to end that and try to find the one that will provide that.
All right.
Now, before, let me go on, because there's one other thing as far as why men do this.
There it is.
That's a lot more difficult question.
That's where I'm coming from.
Why men do this? There could be a lot of different reasons. One reason that I'm thinking of is the word relationship may scare guys, in which case it's something that he wants, but it's not something that he can handle hearing himself verbalize. That could be part of it. There might just be some discomfort with him being alone, and maybe he doesn't want a relationship, or he wants a relationship, but he knows that he's not ready for a relationship. So in a sense, it's kind of like he's leaving the back door open so that when this falls apart, he can escape and say, well, I told you from the beginning that I didn't want this.
Yeah. So I'm going to give up the game on this one. All the fellows are like cringing, like, don't say it, Jim, don't say it. But I'm doing it, guys. I'm telling them. So here's what the women don't know. So her question is, why do guys, plural, right? Why do all these guys on all these different platforms seem to not be looking for a relationship? All right, here's the deal. Guys are much more emotionally brittle than I think they let on. Women have a lot more mental, I think, flexibility in their ability to sort of like ride the wave and go with it and change the definition of things and sort of, get along. Guys, not so much. And so for a guy, whenever they come in and say, listen, I'm not looking for a relationship, it kind of goes back to what Nick said. It's sort of this exit where it's like, okay, you can't hurt me because I'm not available for a relationship, right? So we're just keeping it casual. You can upgrade from that position into a relationship if you, quote, meet the right girl, right? But by broadcasting that you're not available for it, it means that I'm not going to emotionally invest in this. I have sort of like my own guard up, and that way I'm protected. So I think there's A, that. But B, that is attractive, like it or not. When a guy says, hey, I'm not really looking for anything, every girl's like, I'm up to the challenge, and like, I'm going to be the one that you want to be with. Whereas if a guy comes in and goes, yeah, I'm really looking to find the right girl, I just want to marry her and have 10 kids, like, that's a lot. And so like for the girl, it's like, oh, okay, like the stakes of this are much higher, and so it doesn't allow the breathing room. So I think that guys who've been playing this game for a while, they've learned that it's advantageous to them emotionally and advantageous to the possibility of the relationship to just sort of come in and say, oh yeah, I'm not really looking for anything, and then sort of let you sell them. The same way they buy a car. Like they come in and they go, I'm not really looking to buy a car today, but I just thought I'd browse the models. Well, now the salesman's like, oh, let me cut you a deal. Right. Like, let me get you into something you'll really like. And I think that sort of carries into the relationship dating game in a similar way.
Okay, I can see where you're coming from. So then in either of these situations, I think our advice on how to handle this would probably be similar, in which what I would say, again, is going back to the boundaries thing, but have a discussion. Just have an open discussion about, like, I know you're saying that you don't want a relationship, yet this is what I'm noticing. Help me understand this, because these don't seem to line up. Right, having that open dialogue, having that discussion, and just being able to figure out a plan on where everybody is at. It may not be a bad idea to kind of check in and see maybe his position.
Yeah, I think you got to state your own needs. And it sounds like she has. She's told him, I want a relationship, and he's saying, yeah, I'm not really available for that. But I don't know, clarify. I mean, I think if you want to know how to break our game, the way that you can break into the guy world here and win this game of checkers or chess is to just come in and say, oh, let me ask you this. Are you available for a relationship if you meet the right girl? And if they go, oh, yeah, if I met the right girl, okay, good. That was the answer you were really looking for, right? But it still allows him the emotional, boundary to sort of say, but I'm not leaning forward yet. And that's totally fine. Then just let it grow naturally from there. But you've agreed that it's a possibility. And as long as you have that, I think you have all you need to start a conversation, to get to know the person. And then you can have another hard conversation later when you've been dating for a while. And it's like, hey, do you want to make this official? And what does that look like? But you kicked it down the road. But for right now, ask them if they're open to the possibility if they met the right person. If they say yes, that's all that you needed. You can carry on from there.
Very good.
But I've also let the cat out of the bag, Nick. Now all the ladies know why guys say that. It's because they're all emotional sissies, and it's because they are playing a game of chess where they're trying to seem aloof and attractive and, letting you sort of bring the conversation to the table. So that's what it is. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Send your hate mail to Nick at Podtherapy.
No. That mail's going to Jim.
Tweet to us at Podtherapy, guys. Care of Nick.
All right. We had a couple anonymous questions from the website.
Yeah. We got a couple of anonymous questions from podtherapy.net. Remember, you can go up to the website and you can submit questions completely anonymously. We will never know who submitted them. So we have a couple here, and I thought this was a good one. Nick and I deal with addiction a lot, and so this first question I thought was really on point. What realistically can be done about doctors overprescribing opiate painkillers without their patients fully being aware of the dangers of these medications? Nick, what do you think about that?
Here's one of the things that I think we need to educate our doctors. We need to educate the medical community on what's happening with the opioid crisis and what's going on with that. I think doctors, for the most part, are coming at this with a good heart. I mean, their head is in a good place, and they're saying, well, I've got a patient here who's complaining of pain. My job is to eliminate that pain.
Right.
This is a huge discussion that we could probably do a week's worth of podcasts on just about this one topic because it's so complex. It's not one specific thing. But, part of that too is we have to look at the way that our whole health system is set up. If I'm a doctor and I'm working with a patient with chronic pain, we could sit here and come up with a whole pain management regimen. We can come up with a great treatment plan. We can do all these wonderful things, and that's going to take a lot of time. Or I can just write a script real quick.
Right.
Get them out, get into the next one.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a big temptation to do that, But I think it has to come down to education. We have to if we can't educate the doctors, we have to educate the public.
Yes.
I mean, you as a consumer, you have the right to go in there and actually, kind of challenge the doctor on like, well, why do I need this particular medication? Be an educated consumer of these medications that the doctor is prescribing you. Opiates can be very dangerous. They can work very well for acute pain. For chronic pain, though,
they're not effective.
That's not a sustainable way of treating chronic pain.
It's not. And another thing, too, is this. The opiate crisis has gotten out of control. And so it's time, in my opinion, to bring down some consequences. And that includes for my friends that are physicians. Yes, I'm prepared to inform them. And yes, I'm prepared to help them. I'm also prepared to restrict them. And so, what we're doing in Nevada anyway is we're passing rules that require physicians to give an account for how often they're prescribing these, to what dose they are doing it, and what alternatives have been provided to the client or to the patient that don't continually route them back to narcotic painkillers. That, I think we have to also change the role and the thinking and the perspective of the physician. In my opinion, a physician's role is not to make you pain-free. A physician's role is to increase your functionality. If function is the goal, then opiates only serve a very minimal purpose in that and usually get in the way because they'll usually decrease your overall functioning. But if pain is the goal and elimination of pain, then yeah, we could just dope you up and put you under general anesthesia for the rest of your life and just make you pain-free.
Sure. And that's probably an unrealistic expectation,
it's unrealistic.
Right? I mean, that's one of the things that, we think about that seems to be kind of generational. My grandparents probably never had the idea that they were ever going to be pain-free. When you get older, you experience pain. It's like, well, yeah, I'm getting older.
Right. but now it's like pain is intolerable to any extent. So educating the patient, telling them, hey, you need to expect some pain, and our job is to try to not relieve that pain entirely, but to increase your function. And then to have people sort of wade into the difficulty of that. But appreciate the question, guys. Keep sending them in. Go to podtherapy.net, and you can send those over to us. Okay, that's all the time we've got for this week's session. Thank you to those who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by sharing this episode. You can find it at podtherapy.net, on Facebook at facebook.com/podtherapy. You can tweet us at podtherapyguys, and remember that our episodes are available on all platforms that have podcasts.
Help the people in your life by checking in on them and offering an open ear. You never know whose life might be changed by simply being available. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Jim Jobin.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.